Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, our praises, honor, and the glory shall go to Yahweh, Ba'asham, Yahushai, Ba'asham, Makakwadash, Brakathum. Double honor shall go to apostles, elders, and bishops, a great millstone who continue to teach and to rule well. Shalom to the Akims, a great millstone and like-minded camps and individuals who continue to teach as one body, who continue to be out on the highways and byways, risking their lives for the greater good. Shalom to the sincere Akwats who are continuously learning in silence, as the Holy Scriptures have commanded for you to do so. And also shalom to the true believers and subscribers of this true gospel, for this should be considered a true blessing from the higher power. This is Azariah Gabar, representing the King is Coming channel, back at it with another lesson for education purposes. All right, so you people should know by now what's going on. That we're yet in another government shutdown. Okay? And myself, along with the other Akims, for years have been saying that these are just test runs for when stuff really hit the fan. That's all these things are going on. That's the purpose for these shutdowns to take place. Test runs on how people are going to react when the economy truly shuts down again, when another plague or that pestilence of disease X or Nipah virus truly hits Babylon. Martial law, civil unrest, race wars, everything. Okay? So what you see here on this screen is the familiar face once again of the Snyder Reports. And the title for his video is U.S. Security at Risk. Homeland Security Shutdown. So of course this guy, he's nervous like Purvis, all right? But when you're not of the 1/3 of the elect of Yasharallah, these are the results, okay? So the title for my video today will be Babylon Ain't Paying, all right? Babylon ain't paying. So what am I saying about this? Well, simply put, because of this shutdown, a lot of individuals and a lot of you jakes who's part of this federal government are once again not getting paid for your labor. And this is against biblical scripture. Okay? And I'll prove that Al-Baratazah after this video is played in its entirety. And this is why Esau Edom is not fit to be true rulers. He's not fit to be true rulers. No, he's not. Because he will break every law, commandment, and statute of the Lord's. Okay? He will break every commandment of the Lord willingly with no problem. All right? So we'll play this video in its entirety. And then Al-Baratazah cue up precepts as always. And then we're going to close it out. Let's go.
So what happens when the people protecting our airports, borders, and cybersecurity are told to show up to work, but yet they will not be paid? Well, unfortunately, we're at that point again. After tomorrow, Friday, February 13th, the Department of Homeland Security will experience a shutdown, meaning hundreds of thousands of employees that are protecting our national security will be told to show up to work, but they will not be paid. The last time they went through this, remember back in October, went all the way through the middle of November? Yeah, we saw a 43-day shutdown where hundreds of thousands of federal workers resorted to selling their cars, selling plasma, selling anything they could and get their hands on some money just to survive. Well, now some are saying if they have to do this again, they may not show up to work ever again. Look at this. It says a partial government shutdown is about to hit the Department of Homeland Security. That is concerning. Now, one of the reasons why this is kind of happening at this time is because lawmakers agreed to pass the second part of the government funding bill. However, they've stripped out the funding for the Department of Homeland Security, which included an additional $10 billion for ICE. The problem with this is that ICE is already funded for several years. With the One Big Beautiful Bill, ICE got a massive funding push. And so this funding bill isn't a big deal to them. They're going to continue to operate. But here's the problem. What we are hearing is that airports are going to...
It's funny how, Salakia, that the ICE operations are still funded, right? Everyone else in Homeland Security, they're being ordered under directives to still to show up to work, but you ain't getting paid? Are you serious? But yet again, ICE operations, these ICE members are still going to get paid. I wonder why. Let's continue.
The biggest threat. I want to show you a clip. Look at this right here.
Oh my gosh. What?
You remember those clips on TikTok and YouTube and Facebook and Instagram where people would show up to an airport? This one right here is George Bush International Airport. Okay? This was back on November 4th, 2025. Okay? So before the shutdown ended. And one of the things that we saw was that, yes, security was still very tight. But the problem was workers were overworked. They were not getting paid. That was the issue. And now what we're hearing is some of these workers, whether they're working for Border Patrol, they're working for TSA, they're working for the Coast Guard, it doesn't matter. They are saying that if they go through another furlough and they have to return to work without getting paid, they're not going to return to work. They will go find a different job entirely and they will stop working for the federal government. We could see tens of thousands of people simply go and find a different job, meaning that there's...
And let me tell you people something. I did security for the better part of 34, 35 years before I had to retire, okay? And I was, going back and forth about whether to apply for a TSA job, okay? People were telling me, you should go ahead and, you got the experience, you got the credentials, blah, 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 blah. You should go and get down with the TSA job. It's a government job, the benefits, blah, blah, blah. And I'm glad the Rakah Kodash put some sense into my head and told me, nope, don't do it. Let's continue.
Holes in the federal government. But again, this is what we are already expecting. We knew this was coming. We anticipated it 2 weeks ago. And now we're 1 day away. Listen to what Speaker Mike Johnson has to say, though. Listen to this right here.
We are at an impasse. The White House, the administration, President Trump and his team have been working in good faith with Senate Democrats to try to work through this. And they've made some proposals to change some of the immigration enforcement and sort of calm the situation. But Chuck Schumer and Democrats have shown no willingness whatsoever to go along on any of these negotiations. I think, Maria, they are trying to put us into another government shutdown.
Okay. So Speaker Mike Johnson says he believes Democrats are trying to send us into another government shutdown. Listen to this right here.
And the one bill that was left on the table is Department of Homeland Security, that funding measure, which, by the way, covers all the agencies that keep the American people safe.
Hey, real quick, thousands of Americans are taking advantage of the #1 precious metals offer in America. They're
FEMA, TSA, the Coast Guard, the Secret Service, and ICE, of course, and the Customs and Border Patrol. And the Democrats don't want to fund it because it's political for them. And it looks like they're pushing us into another partial government shutdown.
Here's the problem. We, again, as a nation, we should be fairly safe, but there's going to be holes. Okay, we know this. Now, again, this has some funding that goes to Border Patrol, funding that goes to ICE agents, to TSA, to the Secret Service, to the Coast Guard, to FEMA. Okay, but the funding is going to be locked. Now, President Trump, he has the ability to, and he will, he'll order all these employees to go to work, to report to work. But what he doesn't have the power to do is take money from that's been appropriated for some other agency and move it to TSA agents, to Border Patrol. He can't do that. The power of the purse is held with Congress. Congress is the only one that can send out money. Okay? I want to show you something else though. Listen to this right here. Again, it's about 2 minutes long. At the end of this, she's going to pretty much tell us why we cannot go through another government shutdown. Okay, and I'm going to address this because I have some stories as well. Listen to this.
TSA's critical national security mission does not stop during a shutdown. Around 95%, or 61,000 of TSA's employees are deemed essential and continue to work to protect the traveling public during a shutdown while not getting paid. These TSA employees live and work across the nation within your communities, securing over 430 commercial airports and performing incredibly challenging and demanding jobs. I would like to take a moment to recognize the TSA workforce for their unrelenting efforts day in and day out to secure the nation's transportation systems. During the recent 43-day shutdown, TSA personnel continued to report to work without pay and kept our operations running smoothly, ensuring millions of passengers arrived at their destinations safely and securely. While average wait times across the country remained within our established standards, TSA saw increased rates of unscheduled absences and localized spikes in wait times as the shutdown dragged on, and the cost of coming to work became more and more untenable for our frontline workforce. We heard reports of officers sleeping in their cars at airports to save money on gas, selling their blood and plasma, and taking on second jobs to make ends meet. Many were subject to late fees for missed bill payments, eviction notices, loss of childcare, and more, all the while expected to serve their country and perform at the highest level when in uniform. 12 weeks later, some are just recovering from the financial impact of the 43-day shutdown. Many are still reeling from it. We cannot put them through another such experience. It would be unconscionable.
Okay. I want to play one more as well. Listen to this one right here.
You represent 1,600 TSA employees in North Texas. What are they telling you? Are they showing up for work?
Yeah. Well, they're showing up for work, but they are struggling very hard.
Keep in mind, okay, just want you to keep this in mind. This is this was about 3 months ago, okay? So this was when TSA agents were missing checks for the first time, okay? Again, this was a problem. This was a huge problem because TSA agents were missing work, but they were attending work, but they were missing paychecks. And what was happening is people were going to do other things. And that's where there's holes in these agencies. This is from 3 months ago, but listen to what he says, okay? Keep listening.
Also, the impacts that these guys are facing is it's financial, but it's also mental. It's very stressful not knowing when you're going to get your next paycheck. And we also represent the 45,000 TSA officers across the United States. So this is not just locally, but this is everywhere. They are feeling distress. Very difficult. It's very hard.
And Johnny, you say this has been a struggle for you and your family. How are you managing through all this, both emotionally and financially?
Well, what we've been doing is we've been selling things. Unfortunately, we're taking losses during these sales, because we need to have the capital. It's not like the one thing I've learned is that these letters that they give you to give to creditors or to other people, they just look at them and laugh. And
Now, I do want to address those letters. So the agencies will give you a letter saying that I am a federal worker, I am an essential worker, but I have been furloughed. I do not have a paycheck coming in. So they're asking these creditors to, if you could, can you just waive any fees, push any payments back? Because again, I'm not getting a paycheck. And the creditors don't care. Oh, you have a car payment? Sorry, we're not going to allow you to miss a payment for 2 months in a row because the federal government isn't paying you. What do we get out of it? How do we benefit from it? This is our business as well. And just because the federal government has their issues, they want us to take the losses? No, that's not going to happen. And so, again, we're just a day away from the next shutdown for hundreds of thousands of workers. Let's keep listening, though.
And the biggest problem you're going to have coming out of the shutdown is that, everybody in my family is all stressed out, but I'm looking at the other officers that I work with. Also, they have a tremendous amount of fees that are building up. When they get back paid, it's not going to be enough. They need more money than what we're going to be back paid to pay all the people that they owe. It's really became a snowball effect.
What's interesting, and again, I want to tell you some stories. I have a friend of mine that he does work for the TSA, okay, down in Dallas. And one of the things that he said was that he was hit with so many late fees on his credit cards, his utility bill, his rent, right? All these things. He was hit with even his car payment. He was hit with so many late fees over that 43-day shutdown that the amount of late fees added up to a little bit under $1,300. Okay, $1,300 in late fees alone. That was just the late fee. He still had to make the initial payments. That's what's crazy about this. But again, I have another friend, and I told you some stories. He owns a business where they sell like pastries and stuff to the airports. Well, one of the things that he did in order to ensure that his business was still operational was he sold one of his trucks. Now, this was a business truck that he sold it because they weren't sending the truck out as much as they were, previously during the shutdown. And so he sold it. He sold it at a loss. Well, guess what? The government reopened and he purchased it back. And he purchased it for more than he sold it. So he lost money on the sale. He lost money on the purchase because he bought it for more than what he sold it for. Again, pretty much the exact same truck. And now his concern is, are we going to go through another government shutdown? And if we do, will I have to sell another one of my vehicles? Because if I do, I'm going to take a massive hit on it this time. Yeah, that's where we're at. Also heard multiple reports from people not just selling their plasma, okay? They were selling things like even their hair. I remember seeing a Reddit post where somebody cut off their hair and they sent off somebody so they can make a wig out of it. Again, a decent amount of money, but how interesting is that? That they're selling their hair just to get by. One person had to leave their government position, start a business. Okay, their business was doing pretty well over the first few weeks. Then after the first month, it was doing extremely well. That person never came back. Never came back to work for the government again. Still running a successful business. Yeah, that's where we're at. But the reason why I'm bringing this to your attention today is because if we experience another government shutdown, the concern right now is that we are potentially setting ourselves up for disaster and possibly an attack or what some are saying, an invasion. Now, I don't think the United States is going to be invaded. I don't think the United States is going to be hit with multiple attacks. But could we weaken our borders? Could we weaken our security at the airports? Possibly. I don't think that's the most likely outcome, but it's possible. But it all depends on how long this partial government shutdown, because it would only be the Department of Homeland Security that would be shut down. If this goes on for 30 plus days or 60 plus days, the concern right there is that the United States is put at risk and severe risk. So we're going to see what happens. We're going to see if Congress can come together and pass a bill for the Department of Homeland Security. But at this time, it sounds like Republicans and Democrats are at an impasse. And it might not be until something drastic happens before they actually reach an agreement.
All right, buddy boy. So you're wrong, because you already said he doesn't think they're going to be attacks in the country, this, that, and the other, invasions. But guess what? It is. It will. Because the Lord said so in biblical scripture. All right? So again, he's one of those, I have a dream, or I have hope, keep hope alive. And speaking of keep hope alive, the Reverend Jesse Jackson was unalived. When I got up this morning and I saw my phone, I saw one of the notifications. All right? So this guy has a dream. He wants to keep hope alive for Babylon the Great, and that's just not going to happen. But nevertheless, you hear what he was saying about what people were doing to continue to sustain themselves during the last government shutdown. All right? Desperate times definitely will call for desperate measures. And it's going to continue to get worse. You heard? So let's go to some scriptures, Abaratazah, to prove my point. So like I said in the beginning of this lesson, what Esau Edom is doing is against biblical prophecy as far as not paying servants, for their jobs that they're doing. Okay? But in the meantime, these fat cat politicians, they're going to make sure that they're still going to get paid. Oh yeah, they're going to still get their money. But everybody else, oh well, okay? So Deuteronomy 24:14. And it reads, "Thou shalt not oppress an hired servant that is poor and needy, whether he be of thy brethren or of thy strangers that are in thy land, within thy gates." So not only this applies to Yasharallah, but to everyone else too. Okay? You're not supposed to oppress your servants, because that's a form of oppression, mentally and physically. When you know that you got to get up, go to work, commute, spend all this money, go to your job, conduct your manual labors, knowing in the back of your mind that you're not getting paid. All right? Salakia. This is bona fide slavery without the whips and chains, if you ask me. Verse 15. At his day thou shalt give him his hire, neither shall the sun go down upon it. So technically, people are supposed to get paid every day at sundown, according to the Lord. But again, Esau Edom is not truly fit to be in rulership in the righteous way. All right? Because you got people who getting paid every week, every 2 weeks. I've heard of people getting paid once a month. And that's for tax purposes. I don't care what anybody say. This gives Esau's more of an opportunity to take more money out of your taxes when your income hits a certain tax bracket. You heard? And when you go to Leviticus 19:13, it says the same thing. Thou shalt not defraud thy neighbor, neither rob him. The wages of him that is hired shall not abide with thee all night until the morning. I just said that. By sundown every day, an employee is supposed to get paid, and a servant is supposed to get his or her pay. All right? Book of James 5:4 in the New Testament, because people love to say, oh, well, that's the New Testament. That was then and this is now. Well, guess what? Here comes James 5:4, and it says, behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud, cried, and the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. Woo! So simply put, the Lord, he definitely knows what's going on. Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, he knows what's what. And trust and believe it's going to be a steep penalty to you individuals that commit these types of atrocities. All right? But then again, we're under the curses. Because when we go to the book of Baruch, 3rd chapter, 8th verse, in the Apocrypha it reads, behold, we are yet this day in our captivity, where thou hast scattered us for a reproach and a curse, and to be subject to payments, according to all the iniquities of our fathers, which departed from the Lord our Yahweh. Woo! Yep. So there's a reason why these things are happening, and especially to you Jakes, because we're under the curses, and we're subject to payments due to the iniquities of our fathers, and to this very day. All right? You 2/3 are committing iniquities of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. You heard? So just wanted to pass this on. All right? To let you guys know why these things are happening. Because, you know, of course, you're like, why, Lord? Why are these things happening, Lord? Why? Like Eddie Murphy say. Well, now I'm telling you why. This is the Lord's doing when it's all said and done. You heard? So that's going to close out for this beautiful video and lesson for today. Aparatazah, Lord willing. As always, hopefully edification was brought forth. And again, as always, all praises, honor, and the glory shall go to Yahweh, Ba'asham, Yahushai, Ba'asham, Rakakodash, Brakatham, Kwam, Yasharala, Rise Israel. And Aparatazah, Lord willing, on to the next video. Shalom.